Hello, my name is Daniel. I am recording for stage 3, and we are doing a project for cs348 where we create basically an app where we can add, delete, update, and view the financial data for companies in the S&P 500. More specifically, the reason why we chose this topic specifically is because we like looking at the stock market, and especially when you're looking at stocks that you want to invest in, you would want to look at their balance sheets, their earnings reports, their assets, and all those financial things. And we made this application so that other investors potentially in the future might use this application to keep track of the financial data for all the companies in the S&P 500. So to start with, our application was developed in Java, and we used their graphic user interface libraries and the libraries that supports connection to the SQL server. So there's the ORM components where we use Java in order to make the SQL queries. So as you can see here, if you press this button, it gives you a message. I don't know if this fits in the frame, but it's basically what I just explained. S&P 500 DB is a CRUD application for investors, providing financial information of top 25 companies by market cap in the S&P 500 from 2020 to 2021. Obviously, we can extend this as we have this program running for several years. And the numbers that will be outputted and are in the database are in units of billions of dollars US. Okay, so without further ado, I'll basically show you how to get the cash flow statement for this ticker symbol Apple, AAPL. So I'll be selecting one of these: cash flow, balance sheet, income statement, or price target. I'll select cash flow, and then the quarter at which the earnings report came out. So let's say quarter 2. And then what I would basically be doing is just press the apply button, and then you would get the net income value of Apple for Q2. Excuse me. And the operating activities, investing activities, financial activities, and so on and so forth. All these values will be outputted under the cash flow statement. We can also look at the balance sheet. You can see all these income statement and price targets. Currently, I do not have the price target for Apple, but it really depends on the company. Some companies do have price targets assigned by banking institutions. For Apple, there isn't one right now. So you can also make comparisons between two companies, which is very good for picking stocks and comparing them and seeing which one is the better investment. So I can do the same thing, cash flow in Q2, and this time I'll be comparing with Microsoft and Apple. So I press the apply button and notice that some of these cells are green, some of these cells are gray. Gray means the lower numbers, so Apple would have a net income of 52 billion USD compared to Microsoft having 44 billion USD. And in some categories, Microsoft obviously does better, and this is just you can go through and check to see which company might be overall a better investment. And you can also select all companies like so, and then you'll get the income statement for all the companies for Q2. So you can see not only do we have Apple and Microsoft, we also have Amazon, Google, another is basically the same thing, Tesla, Nvidia, Berkshire, Facebook, JP Morgan, and you get the point. So these are the top 25 tickers in the S&P 500. And another thing we can do is instead of just getting all the cash flow statements or everything under cash flow statements, you can also select subcategories like so. you can select net income, and this will only display the net income for Apple and Microsoft. Operating activities, and you can only get the operating activities for Apple and Microsoft. So you can do all these things. So that's the part where you get to view the data inside the database that we created. Another thing we can do is we can update the database, or the data inside the database. You can add/update. So basically how this works is we're going to enter in a ticker symbol for, let's say, a stock that you want to add to the S&P 500 database, or a stock that already pre-exists and you want to update the, let's say, the financial information for that. So what I'm going to be doing is, let's make up a ticker called, let's just do it AAA. And then I want the data for quarter 2 2021, let's say. And now we're going to be writing in the total revenue, gross profit, and so on and so forth. Because we don't have that much time, I'll just initialize all of these as -1. So you can change all these things. You can also change the price target. And what happens is that at the end, you can see in our list we have another ticker symbol called AAAA. So let's check out the data for that. Yeah, so as you can see, the data is now in the database, and the program is able to connect to the database and query that information. You can also delete this database, or this data. So I can press delete, write in the ticker quarter 2 2021, and now if I just try to query AAA, it seems like it's still there. Hold on a second. Quarter 2 and 2020. Okay, so you can also delete, and I'll show you an instance where you can also update pre-existing data. So for example, let's update the Microsoft data for quarter 1 year 2021. If I just change it into all of this, you'll see that once we query Microsoft, okay, and as you can see, if I log on to the database, here are the tables that we use: balance sheet, earnings ID, price targets, cash flow, income statement, and okay. 많이 에디팅을 해야 되겠다. Okay, so this is basically our code, and I'll just basically be briefly explaining what's going on. So it's just one file with several sections that I labeled. So this is public class starting screen, which is going to display all our graphic user interface and be doing all the operations in order to display the data on the screen. This is where we connect to the SQL database. Like so, we're using special library in Java, as I said, to achieve ORM and have, connect to the SQL library in an object-oriented programming manner. We also have this one block where we just refresh all the time, so that whenever there's new data, we would refresh the main screen and update the data accordingly. And we would set up the GUI and boxes containing the data from the databases. So here's where we initialize the whole JFrame, which is correspond to this entire screen, and so on and so forth. Here's where we create the tabs. There's some buttons and so on and so forth. And one thing that I want to direct your attention to is all these buttons. So there's an apply button, and also the delete/add/update button. So here's where we select whether we want to query the cash flow, balance sheet, income statement, and so on and so forth, and then we store it in this variable called category. Excuse me. And then we would select the quarter, like so here. And then what we end up doing is at the very end, when the button is pressed to apply, we would use this prepare statement and use string formatting to put in the category, quarter, and company 1, company 2 into this SQL query, execute it, and then get the result that we want. So this is the prepared statement component of our program. And we do something similar with apply and so this is just GUI stuff. There's also the add delete button, where we also query all these things, get user input, and then we use it.
It's now 11:45 p.m. and the library will be closing in 15 minutes at midnight. If you have any books, please bring them to the circulation desk or the self-checkout machines. And remember that Walks and Hicks is open 24-hour with swipe card access. Thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll be using the data that we got from the delete add buttons, and then also run these prepared statements in order to delete from the SQL databases. So that's our code, and 이건 어떻게 해야 되지? Transaction is unusual. So for our transactions and isolation levels, we decided to have 5 databases, or 5 tables rather, where we have tables for balance sheets, for assets, and so on and so forth. And we have this one table called earnings ID, where essentially I want to show you the terminal. There you go. Yeah, so this earnings ID is going to look like this. So as you can see, there is this indexing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah, 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 and the Q1 2021 Apple. So for each of these numbers, these distinct numbers correspond with a combination of quarters, the year, and the company. And this number is going to be the primary key, excuse me, and it will be the foreign key in all these other tables that we have. So for example, for balance sheet, this is all the data, and corresponding to them are these ID that is basically a direct mapping from earnings ID. And for example, like Apple Q1 2021 will have all this data for the balance sheet. And we decided to have this isolation so that we have kind of like a distinct, a very defined isolation of each section of the earnings report. And in terms of lessons that we learned during the project phases is that we could have definitely planned this out much more in a better way. For example, delegating the task so that one person could be working on the code, and one person could be working on another part of the code. But I think in any project we can definitely have more delegation so that we can more efficiently finish this project. But that's probably like the main thing that we learned from the project. Besides that, there were some minor ones that I can't really think off the top of my head. But yeah, this was quite a learning experience, and I'm glad that I was able to finish this project with my other two teammates, Jinwoo and David. So thank you for watching this presentation, and yep. All right. Stop.